Everyone says Ox Alpha is GLM. I think we might be looking at the wrong company. GLM 5.3 landed only a few days ago. Z.ai has already handed developers huge amounts of access to test it, mostly through coding tools. And now we're supposed to believe they're doing it all over again. Another extremely capable model, another massive free preview. Meanwhile, Chinese AI companies are still working around limited access to NVIDIA's newest hardware. Kimi already showed how hard it is to keep up with people who are willing to pay. So why would Z.ai burn even more compute on another huge free test days after launching GLM 5.3? There is another company with enormous compute, its own AI chips, and a very good reason to hide its name. Google. That sounds like a stretch, but the timing, the compute, and the way Ox Alpha keeps changing all point somewhere else. Stay with me. So let's start with the strongest argument against it. Why does almost everyone think Ox Alpha is GLM? The GLM theory did not come out of nowhere. Users compared Ox Alpha's behavior, its tokenizer patterns, and its API characteristics against other models. Some of those fingerprints reportedly look very close to GLM. Then there is Z.ai's history. Before GLM-5 was officially released, Z.ai tested an anonymous model called Pony Alpha. So when another anonymous alpha model appeared, people connected the two immediately. Pony Alpha was GLM. Now we have Ox Alpha. And if we only look at the technical clues, GLM is still the strongest guess. But the timing is strange. GLM 5.3 is not an old model that Z.ai desperately needs to replace. It arrived days ago, and Z.ai has already been pushing it hard for coding. Developers can reach it through different coding tools and harnesses, and Z.ai has been generous about getting it into people's hands. So Z.ai is already getting what a large public preview normally buys you: real developers on real projects and a lot of usage data. Which makes me ask a very simple question. Why would they need to do the same thing again immediately? Maybe Ox Alpha is an early test of the next GLM. That is absolutely possible. There are already rumors about a much larger GLM model, often called GLM 5.5, aimed at the same frontier territory as models like Fable. Those are still rumors. They just launched GLM 5.3. They're still serving it. They may already be building the next flagship. And on top of that, they'd be giving away another extremely capable model at huge scale. Possible? Yes. But does Z.ai really need to do that right now? Kimi shows how valuable inference capacity becomes. Demand for its recent models has been enormous, and reports around those launches showed how quickly GPU capacity turns into a problem. Those were not people asking for unlimited free inference. Those were customers trying to buy access, and capacity still ran out. That doesn't mean every Chinese AI company has the same infrastructure problem. It shows why compute matters. Now compare that with Ox Alpha. It's available through OpenRouter and usable inside different coding harnesses, and developers can push serious workloads through it without paying the model provider directly. OpenCode has talked about infrastructure capable of handling an enormous amount of token traffic. Whoever is behind Ox Alpha is clearly prepared to spend a lot on this experiment. Before I give you the Google theory, I want to know where you stand right now. Do you think Ox Alpha is GLM, Google, or someone completely different? Drop your prediction in the comments. And when the real company is finally revealed, we come back here and see who got it right. This is the part I keep coming back to. Z.ai already knows what happens when developers get easy access to a strong coding model. GLM 5.3 is already being tested in real projects with coding integrations and paid coding plans behind it. So what does another enormous anonymous test give them only days later? There are possible answers. Blind evaluations without the GLM name shaping people's opinions. An early checkpoint of GLM 5.5. A different type of coding data. All of those are reasonable, but every token still costs compute. And that compute could be serving GLM customers, improving GLM 5.3, or building whatever comes next. This matters even more because Chinese AI companies do not have the same access to the newest NVIDIA hardware as American hyperscalers. Z.ai can obviously run frontier models. That is not the question. The question is whether giving away this much inference right now is the most logical move. Google is in a completely different position. It has its own TPUs, Google Cloud, enormous data centers, and years of AI infrastructure built at a scale very few companies can match. So if you ask me which company could afford to let thousands of developers hammer a powerful anonymous model for free, Google would be very high on that list. But compute alone is not what makes this theory interesting. Google also has a reason to hide the name. Gemini comes with expectations. The moment Google announces a new Gemini model, people already have opinions about it. Some people love Gemini. Others were disappointed by previous versions. Some immediately question Google's benchmark claims. And before the model even gets a fair test, the conversation becomes Gemini versus Claude, Gemini versus GPT, Gemini versus everything. The name itself changes the test. So what if Google simply removed the name? Imagine Google has a new model internally, a future Gemini update, an experimental coding model, or something we don't know about yet. Instead of announcing another Gemini, Google gives it a completely anonymous name. Ox Alpha. No Google logo, no Gemini branding, no giant benchmark presentation, just use it. Now developers judge the model without knowing what they're supposed to think about it. If it performs badly, Google loses almost nothing. They change it, improve it, or swap the checkpoint behind the same anonymous name. But if people love it, something much more valuable happens. The internet starts marketing the model for them. And by the time Google puts the Gemini name on it, the model has already built a reputation without the brand. Ox Alpha also does not seem to be sitting still. Some people who have been using it over multiple days report changes in its behavior. Some feel that it has improved. That does not prove Google is behind it. It doesn't even prove the underlying weights are being updated. The provider could be changing the system prompt, improving tool handling, changing the serving stack, or swapping checkpoints behind the same name. We simply do not know. Which is why an anonymous preview is so useful. You can change things without turning every update into a major product announcement. Thousands of developers keep testing it. You watch what works, you change something, they test again, and when you're finally happy with the model, you reveal the real name. If Google wanted to improve a future Gemini model in public, without every experiment carrying the Gemini brand, this would be a very clever way to do it. Think about how Google normally launches a model. It announces a new Gemini, publishes benchmarks, and everyone immediately tries to prove whether those benchmarks are real. Now imagine the opposite. For weeks, developers use Ox Alpha. They like it, they share results, they call it one of the most interesting mystery models available. And everyone keeps asking one question: who made this? Then Google finally says, it was Gemini. Now Google doesn't have to convince people that Gemini got better. They already decided that before they knew it was Gemini. The brand comes after the reputation, and for a company with Google's resources, weeks of free inference is simply part of the launch budget. There is one major problem with my theory. The strongest technical clues still point toward GLM, and I can't ignore that. Z.ai has used anonymous alpha models before. The reported fingerprints are meaningful. Those are stronger pieces of evidence than saying Google has enough money to run the model. So I'm not saying Ox Alpha is definitely Gemini. I cannot prove that. Betting only on the technical evidence today, GLM would still be the safer choice. But people are calling this mystery solved too early. Because the GLM theory has to explain more than what the model looks like. It has to explain why Z.ai would launch another huge free experiment only days after GLM 5.3. Why it needs another wave of public coding data this quickly. Why it would spend that inference while potentially developing its next flagship, and why Ox Alpha appears to be changing while people are testing it. The technical clues point one way, the incentives make me look somewhere else. So here is my prediction. Ox Alpha may absolutely turn out to be GLM. Right now, that is still the strongest evidence-based guess. But I am no longer convinced that the answer is that simple. GLM 5.3 just launched. Z.ai has already pushed it aggressively into developers' hands. Chinese inference capacity is extremely valuable, and another major GLM is already rumored to be in development. Meanwhile, Google has the compute to run an experiment like this, a reason to remove the Gemini name. and the ability to keep improving an anonymous model while developers test it in the real world. So if Ox Alpha eventually gets revealed as Gemini, I will not be surprised. Now we wait for the reveal. And when it happens, we are coming straight back to this video. Subscribe if you want to find out whether this theory was completely wrong or whether Google has been hiding in plain sight the whole time.